Konnichiwa, minasan. Dominic here. The Japanese work-life culture is quite different from our well-known American work-life culture, though they are still quite similar in some ways too. Like our working culture in America, Japan's is also quite flawed, and its flaws are quite popular and have been depicted in quite a lot of media. So here we'll be covering what it does well, what it does wrong, and any ways to fix flaws. So sayonara for now, Mina, and I'll see you on the flip slide.
Very unlike most Americans, the Japanese can actually enjoy their work. I will speak about the normal perception about the Japanese work life, which is normally seen, but we will first speak of the actual good parts about the Japanese work life. For example, the Japanese work environment is actually described to be somewhat family-esque. So those long hours they work, more on that later, can be interpreted to the signs of love and loyalty towards your family, quote unquote. Though this comes at the detriment of something that will be later mentioned.
Hey, Sigma Dominic here. Unlike a lot of American jobs, the average Japanese job is actually very stable. Japanese employers rarely actually dismiss their workers, unlike in America, where people are constantly fired or let off from their jobs. You'd have to make quite a large mistake in Japan to be let off from your workplace. I do find this to be quite awesome sauce.
There are some other positives, such as workplace benefits, which aren't common practice here in the States. This includes Japan giving you free healthcare, and also paying for your transportation fees to ease stress to a degree. The gaining of free healthcare is something which the average American would most likely appreciate quite a lot. This would of course include paid transportation, which is paid by the company you would work for. Other benefits include social and housing benefits.
Due to Japanese companies seeing their workers as assets, Japanese companies are willing to help their employees grow their skills as long as the worker is motivated to learn or grow. Some companies are even willing to pay for their workers' classes/seminars. In addition to this, unlike the past where only Japanese workers are truly part of their workplace, foreigners of all kinds are welcome. I would say this is based in, dare I say, poggers.
Now, we may have just gone through plenty of benefits about working in Japan, and now people may think that living and working there is way better than working in the country of freedom, though those benefits do come at the detriment of one's own physical and mental health. Though, why is this so? Well, this is what will be covered in this part of the video.
Wow, hi Amina, I'm back, Dominic time. Japanese workers are typically forced to work extremely long and grueling hours. This is typically from being forced to make a certain quota, which is typically done by adding as much overtime as needed to accomplish said quota. This is quite crazy. Crazy? I've been crazy before. Well, anyways, problems with Japan's working conditions aren't only inherent to the workplace itself, but also to the mentality that these people have.
Statistics do say the Japanese people are some of the most vacation-deprived workers overall. While the Japanese do have and get plenty of vacation time, the cultural view on taking vacations is much more frowned upon than it is here in America. A survey revealed that 53% of people don't know how much annual leave they have. It's also common for Japanese workers to feel guilt about taking leave no matter the reason.
Hey buddies, Dominic here. While foreign workers are being accepted in the Japanese work culture, language barriers would become a major issue. Another rising issue in the work-life culture of Japan would be the slow and imminent decrease of the Japanese population, forcing the ideal worker model to no longer be sustainable.
Another problem with Japan's working conditions, though it is getting improved, is again the crazy working conditions. Some studies had shown that workers had worked 80 to 100 hours of overtime. The crazy part is that some of it even went unpaid. This overworking also led to the phenomenon called karushi, or death by overwork. Karushi is normally caused by heart attacks or strokes, normally caused from malnutrition, fasting, or stress.
Continue on with the working conditions in the life of the Japanese. The engagement rate of workers tends to be rather low compared to the rest of the world. What this means is that Japanese workers tend to not be very enthusiastic or involved with their given workplace.
To finish this part off, we will give some examples, which everyone should know. Specifically, the overworking and unfair treatment of animators in Japan. Anime is one of, if not the, most notable export that Japan has other than destroyed American harbors and the various war crimes. Interviews of animators have shown that their average workday is around 11 to 12 hours, and they get very minimal breaks, with them having normally less than 5 a month. This, coupled with their relatively low wages compared to how much work they put in and the amount of talent they need to have. The conditions for animators will most likely not be improved anywhere in the near future due to increased demand for anime ever since the pandemic.
In the work the Japanese commit to, every detail is designed to be perfect to the brim. no matter how minor or how major it turns out to be. When one mistake is made to be an individual, this could infect an entire group of people, which is to be considered a crime. The reason behind this would be that work tends to be more focused on the group as a whole, not just the individual responsible for this mistake.
This brings us to the big question: what can we do? There are several solutions we can implement to help contribute against these workplace flaws, bringing Japan together with the rest of the world in terms of workplace culture.
One major factor to look over in Japanese work culture is the tradition of post-work parties and or drinks. This practice allows for workers to socialize and take a good break, allowing for them to unwind greatly from an immense workload. How this can be improved upon would be a longer break of these practices, which could allow for workers to truly relieve their possible stress at work.
Another thing to take into consideration is how work culture is in the Western Hemisphere, such as the United States, is rather individualistic, whereas the Japanese tends to be more collectivist. By this definition, cubicles for an individual person are not seen commonly in Japan, as companies feel it is selfish for one person to accomplish something in work, instead of being completely collectivist. Perhaps Japanese work culture could have been more individualistic, as their symptoms worked as well, as work done alone can be accomplished better.
In terms of healthcare and expenses for work transportation in Japan, there is really no problem in these systems for there to improve or fix upon, as it is already covered for the people. This is because healthcare is a requirement for people above the age of 20, considered to be illegal if one didn't own healthcare above this age. Additionally, companies would pay for the expenses of their workers' travels of all kinds, such as a bus, a subway, or train.
Considering the differences between the United States and Japan's work cultures, it is to be noted that American work culture tends to have less commitment to work, making more time available to be with their families. In the Japanese work style, there is more commitment to work, preventing people from being able to see their families as often. Perhaps there could be specific days throughout the week where less work is required to commit to, in an attempt for people to spend more time with their families. Though making changes in any of these ways would be rather difficult, as changing an entire perspective and culture is a lot harder to do than said.
Hierarchy plays a definite role in the Japanese society as well, which has a great effect on work practices in companies. In major companies, workers are usually people who tend to join outside of school time, staying in these major companies throughout a majority of their lifetime. This is because this hierarchy tends to be based on age and length of service for seniority. Rather than focusing on major companies beforehand, focusing on school would provide a more educational experience in preparations of conditions of a workplace.
Okay, so all in all, the Japanese work culture is quite different from that of the work culture here in America. To sum it up, the Japanese are a lot more committed to their work at their own life's detriment, as their work becomes their life, while America is more personal based, where people make time for themselves and their families. Though, working on this slide on the final day, it'll probably cause myself to experience how the average Japanese worker feels. Though, that is besides the point. The Japanese work culture, being extremely hierarchy based, the commitment base causes extreme stress on the workers, and you could say makes them feel imprisoned by themselves.